In 565 AD, the Byzantine Empire was the superpower of the Mediterranean, ruling from Spain to Mesopotamia, from the Danube to the Sahara. A century and a half later, it controlled little more than one city and the land behind it. This is the story of the most dramatic imperial contraction in history, and the miracle that it survived at all. To understand how this happened, we need to start with the inheritance Justinian left behind and why it was poisoned from the start. The historian Paul Kennedy coined the term imperial overreach when an empire's military commitments outstrip its economic capacity to sustain them. Justinian's reconquests are a textbook case. North Africa fell relatively fast, but retaking Italy from the Ostrogoths took 20 years of grinding, devastating war. Then came the plague. In 541, a catastrophic pandemic struck the empire, the Justinianic plague. It killed millions, hollowed out the tax base, and drained the manpower pool at precisely the moment the empire was overextended across 3 continents. And the unraveling began immediately. In 568, just 3 years after Justinian's death, the Lombards invaded Italy. 2 decades of brutal reconquest started coming undone almost overnight. Italy was only the beginning. Enemies pressed every frontier simultaneously. To the east, the Persians. Justinian had bought peace with gold to free his hand for the Western campaigns, and that peace collapsed in the 540s, and by the late 6th century, full-scale war with Persia consumed the empire's eastern armies. From the north, the Avars, a Turkico-Mongol people who led a powerful steppe confederation, and the Slavs, Indo-European peoples who formed the mass of settlers behind them. From the 570s onward, they poured into the Balkans, the empire's European heartland, and the strain broke the army's loyalty. In 602, Emperor Maurice, campaigning desperately in the Balkans, was murdered by his own mutinous troops. The empire's political center cracked. Maurice's murderer, a centurion named Phocas, seized the throne and plunged the empire into 8 years of misrule. The Persian king used Maurice's death as a pretext for all-out invasion. By 619, Persia had conquered Syria, Palestine, and Egypt. Constantinople itself faced starvation. Then came the siege of 626. Persian forces camped on the Asian shore of the Bosphorus. Avars and Slavs massed before the Theodosian walls on the European side. The city was surrounded. Defenders placed holy icons on the walls and prayed to the Virgin Mary. The strait kept the 2 armies from coordinating, and Constantinople held. Emperor Heraclius rallied, defeated Persia by 628, and recovered the lost eastern provinces. It looked like salvation. It wasn't. In 634, Arab armies united under Islam burst out of the Arabian Peninsula. At the Battle of Yarmouk in 636, they shattered the Byzantine field army. Syria fell, Palestine fell, and by 642, Egypt, the empire's breadbasket, its tax engine, home to Alexandria, its second largest city, was gone. All of it in barely a decade. By 642, the empire had lost more territory in 80 years than the Western Empire lost in a century. So why didn't it fall? 3 things saved Byzantium. First, Constantinople itself. The Theodosian walls, a triple line of fortifications, made the city nearly impregnable by land. The Golden Horn could be sealed with a massive chain, and the Byzantine navy wielded Greek fire, an incendiary weapon introduced around the 670s that could burn on water. No attacker could take the city without controlling both land and sea, and no one managed both. Second, geography. Anatolia, modern Turkey, formed a mountainous, defensible core that could absorb raids without collapsing. Third, institutional adaptation. The empire reorganized its remaining provinces into sims, military administrative districts where soldiers received land in exchange for service. This created a self-sustaining defense force without the tax revenues the empire had lost, but survival didn't mean prosperity. What followed was a Byzantine Dark Age, and the parallels to the Western Roman collapse are striking. Cities across Anatolia and the Balkans shrank or were abandoned entirely. Populations retreated to fortified hilltops. Long-distance trade networks broke down. Written culture contracted so severely that historians have almost no sources from this period, and that silence is itself the evidence. Constantinople remained a great city, but it was an island of urban life in a sea of ruralization. The Western Empire had experienced all of this in the 5th century, the same deurbanization, the same economic contraction, the same cultural retreat. The crucial difference was political. The West fragmented into successor kingdoms, Franks, Visigoths, Ostrogoths. The East held together as a single state. The emperor still ruled from Constantinople. The church still functioned. The bureaucracy, diminished, still operated. And the threats kept coming. Around 680, the Bulgars, a Turkic steppe people, crossed the Danube and established the Khanate, a state ruled by a military khan in what had been Byzantine territory. The empire couldn't dislodge them. By 717, the map told the full story. Constantinople, Western Anatolia, Sicily, bits of southern Italy, scattered Aegean islands, that was it. And in 717, a massive Arab fleet and army arrived to finish the job, the Second Arab Siege of Constantinople, the empire's nadir. What emerged from this crucible was no longer the empire of Justinian, it was something new. Step back, and the pattern becomes clear. This wasn't random bad luck, it was imperial overreach, the predictable consequence of conquests that couldn't be sustained. Justinian stretched the empire across the Mediterranean, then plague gutted its capacity to hold those conquests, and a cascade of enemies exploited the gap between commitments and resources. The same pattern repeats across history. Spain's empire in the 17th century, Napoleon's conquest, the Soviet Union's overextension in the Cold War. Empires expand beyond their means, and when the shocks come, and they always come, the contraction is brutal. Byzantium's distinction is that it contracted without breaking. The state survived, but the empire that survived bore little resemblance to the one Justinian built. The losses of Syria and Egypt permanently redirected Byzantine civilization. The multilingual, multicultural late antique world, where Greek, Syriac, Coptic, and Latin coexisted under one emperor, was gone. What remained was Greek-speaking Orthodox Christian, centered on Anatolia, and organized for war. It was no longer the Eastern Roman Empire in any meaningful cultural sense. It was something new, a medieval Greek state forged in crisis, and from that stripped-down core, Byzantium would slowly rebuild. The same system would produce capable armies. Constantinople's defenses would hold again and again. Greek fire would keep the seas open. The recovery would take centuries, but it would come. Byzantium didn't fall in the 7th century, but the empire that survived was a different creature from the one Justinian had built. It had been stripped to its bones, and from those bones, it would slowly rebuild.